The bus was already half empty when I got on. It was one of those late night routes that only runs once every hour, the kind mostly used by people leaving bars or finishing late shifts. By the time we reached the outskirts of town, it was just me, the driver, and one other passenger sitting near the back. I remember noticing him because he hadn't moved since I got on. Not once. The bus lights were dim, and he sat in the corner seat, his head tilted down just enough that I couldn't see his face clearly. I figured he was asleep. At the next stop, two people got off. No one got on. The driver pulled away, and that's when something weird happened. He stopped at the next stop, but nobody was there. I figured maybe someone had pressed the button earlier, but the doors stayed open longer than usual, like the driver was waiting. After a few seconds, they closed again. We drove on. A couple of minutes later, the bus slowed down again. Another stop, another empty sidewalk. The doors opened, but again, nobody. That's when I noticed something strange. The man in the back had moved, just slightly. Before, he'd been facing the window. Now he was facing the aisle, and I could feel him looking at me. I tried not to stare, but the silence on that bus made everything feel louder. Every bump in the road, every squeak of the brakes. Then the stop bell rang, but I hadn't pressed it, and I was pretty sure the driver hadn't either. The bus slowed at another empty stop. The doors opened again, but no one was there. The driver leaned out of his seat and looked down the aisle. "All good back there?" he asked. Neither of us answered. The doors closed. We drove another minute before the stop bell rang again. This time, I turned around. The man was sitting upright now, still staring. He hadn't moved his hands, hadn't reached for the cord, but the bell had rung. The driver muttered something under his breath and pulled over again. Same thing. Empty stop, doors open, nobody gets on, nobody gets off, except when the doors closed again, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around quickly. The back seats were empty. The man was gone. I scanned the whole bus. He wasn't anywhere. My stomach dropped. There was nowhere he could have gone. The bus had been moving the whole time. I stood up and walked halfway down the aisle. "Did that guy get off?" I asked the driver. He looked confused. "What guy?" "The one in the back." He shook his head slowly. "You've been the only passenger since Oak Ridge." I felt the blood drain from my face, because Oak Ridge was where I got on. The driver glanced in the mirror. Then his expression changed. "Sit down," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because someone just rang the bell again." The bus slowed to another stop. The doors opened, and for the first time that night, I saw footprints appear on the wet pavement outside, like someone invisible had just stepped off the bus. I made a mistake getting into that train car. It was late. almost midnight. I'd just missed the earlier train home, so I had to catch the last one. The platform was almost completely empty when it arrived. When the doors opened, most of the passengers crowded into the middle cars, but the one right in front of me was empty. I figured that was perfect. A quiet ride home. I stepped inside and sat near the door. At first, nothing felt strange. The train pulled away and the city lights started sliding past the windows. Then the first thing happened. The lights flickered. Just once. The kind of flicker you barely notice. I checked my phone and tried to ignore it. At the next station, the train slowed and stopped. The doors opened. No one got in. No one got out. The doors closed again. The train moved, and that's when I heard footsteps from the other end of the car. I looked up, but no one was there, just rows of empty seats. I told myself it was the train moving, metal shifting, old tracks. Then the footsteps came again. Slow, deliberate, one at a time coming closer. My chest tightened. "Hello?" I called. No answer. The footsteps stopped. The train entered a tunnel and the windows turned black like mirrors. That's when I saw it. Not in front of me, but behind me. A shape standing in the aisle. But when I turned around, the aisle was empty. My heart started pounding. The train slowed again for another station. This time I stood up, planning to move to a different car. The doors opened. I stepped onto the platform and looked through the window. The car I'd just left was still empty, except for one thing. Every seat I had walked past was slowly folding down. One after another, like someone invisible was sitting in them. My cousin used to drive night buses. He told me this story once and swore it actually happened. His route went through the outskirts of the city. Quiet residential roads where hardly anyone rode the bus after midnight. One night around 1:30 a.m, he pulled up to a stop and saw a woman waiting. She was standing alone under the streetlight. Long coat, head down. He opened the doors and she stepped inside. She didn't say anything. Just dropped some coins in the machine and walked to the back. He thought nothing of it. The bus kept going. 10 minutes later, he checked the mirror. She was still sitting there, completely still. Then he noticed something strange. At the next stop, she rang the bell. He pulled over and opened the doors, but she didn't get off. Instead, she stayed seated. He looked in the mirror again. "Miss, this your stop?" he asked. No response. Just sitting there. Eventually, he shrugged and kept driving. 5 minutes later, the bell rang again. Another stop, another open door, and again, she didn't move. Now he was getting annoyed. "Ma'am, you're ringing that?" he asked. Still nothing. He kept driving. The road ahead was empty. No cars, no people, just street lights. Then the bell rang again. This time, right behind him. He froze, because in the mirror, she wasn't in the back anymore. She was sitting in the first seat behind the driver. He hadn't seen her walk up. He didn't hear footsteps. But somehow, she'd moved. And she was staring straight ahead, at the road. He pulled over again and opened the doors. "You getting off here?" Slowly, she shook her head, then pointed down the road. He followed her finger. There was another bus stop about 100 feet ahead, so he closed the doors and drove forward. When he stopped there, he opened them again, and finally, she stood up. She stepped down from the bus and started walking away. My cousin watched her in the mirror, and that's when he saw something that made him quit night shifts forever. As she walked under the streetlight, her feet never touched the ground.